Hi, everyone. Welcome to What is Access Consciousness, the big question that we all have with Dr. Anthony Mattis. Thank you for doing this with and for us, Anthony.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And today I want to, so basically it's a big question, what the heck is access consciousness? And there's not a whole lot of really, well, there's a whole lot of preliminary info about what access is, and it's a really big question. There's lots and lots of different parts and tiers and pieces and concepts, and it's really, really out there, and it's really, really simple all at the exact same time. And I know that Anthony and I sort of thought, let's get you doing a hangout on what is access consciousness, because there's so many people who just, don't have any idea. And it's like, what is this weird stuff? And why is Anthony traveling the world waving his arms in the air like he's in Saturday Night Fever? And what's really going on here? So today we're here to figure out what's really going on. What are these trips Anthony goes on called access consciousness? So we're basically going to sort of do this interview style. I'm going to ask him questions about different things. And it's also like I'll interview, and it's also you guys can interview and ask questions about what it is. But we're going to keep the whole thing very basic, very introductory, so we can really answer the question, if we can, in 1 hour, what is access consciousness? So we're going to start with the bars and the clearing statement, and then we're going to talk about ESP as well. So welcome, everyone. And Anthony, maybe you could start by just saying hi and just kind of giving people your background and just who you are, and then we can talk about how you got into access after that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so as you know, I'm Dr. Anthony Mattis. I'm a holistic chiropractor here in Bluffton, South Carolina. Nice to see everybody's beautiful faces, and thanks for joining us. It's awesome, and all the different energies contribute to the call, and it's in such amazing ways. So I'm really grateful to see you all on the show, I was gonna say, but on the screen here. And so please don't hesitate to ask me any questions. There's no question that's too personal for me. I'm not the type of guy that keeps skeletons in the closet. So I wear my heart on my sleeve. I have my whole entire life. So don't hesitate to ask me anything that you want. And if it's something that's meant more for a personal conversation, then we'll do that. But I got involved in access consciousness about 4 years ago. 4 years ago, but back in 2011, April 2011, my late wife, the mother of my 3 children, committed suicide. And I've been in practice for 16 years up till now. At that point, I guess it was about 11 years. And I basically studied just about every modality that you can think of under the sun. I've studied metaphysics. I became a certified teacher in a study called concept therapy, and then I did rebirthing, did a lot of breath work. Then I was a non-denominational Christian. I spoke in tongues. I laid my hands on people, prayed for healing. Had a guru for about 1.5 years, and I practiced all my.
What was your guru's name? Who was your guru?
His name was Jaggi Vasudev, and he was from the Isha Yoga Foundation. So.
Where did you live?
I was very diligent about all my practices and studies, and really my whole life, more so than business. I was just a seeker of truth, whatever you want to call that, and I wanted to know, things that were beyond what this reality was presenting itself as. I always knew that there was more out there, but I was never really satisfied or felt like I was never really fed as a child growing up, especially being raised Catholic, but not, once a year Catholic type of thing. But there was always this burning desire to know God, if you will, to know consciousness, to know universal intelligence, whatever. So anyway, by the time I had met my wife, and we were together for about 10 years, and she lost her battle to manic depression, also known as bipolar disorder. And when she took her life, it literally left me on my knees, praying to God, because I had, that's who I had been talking to all that time, and like, why? Why didn't any of these tools work? I mean, they would work for a little while, but they obviously didn't work enough to at least give her hope to hang on a little bit longer. She had done so well for so long, and so when she started getting sick again, it was really came as a shock to me. But during that time, I'm like, okay, this is something we just need to deal with. Let's deal with it. But for some reason, she lost hope. She was very ashamed, and she believed that the children and I would be better off without her, so she decided to leave. And then about 9 months after her passing, as I was going through the grieving of the loss, I received an email, because I get a lot of different emails for a lot of different modalities and whatnot. And there was an email about the bars that Blossom Benedict was doing, and it was January of 2012. So I learned that it was a hands-on technique. And so as a chiropractor, and I work with my hands, I'm like, well, let's see what this is about.
So let's start there. So basically, let's go kind of through your timeline of who is Dr. Mattis. But you grew up in New Jersey. Your dad was a Wall Streeter. You didn't want to be a Wall Streeter, and you kind of, from there you became a chiropractor, and you've been on this seeking path, like as a young man from a very young age. And when your wife, I'm just trying to recap here, when your wife passed, you kind of looked at like what else is possible, and like all these other paths didn't get you or her where you were able to go, and then this modality showed up that has been different than the other one.
Well, no one, basically my whole life I'd always felt like I was working against the wind, or I was like always trudging in mud. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always told that I was not as smart as my peers, and so I was put in special ed classes growing up, and I would have conversations with my father, and he would remind me of the movie The Titanic or the Poseidon Adventure, and he says, if the rest of your class is here, he's like, you're sinking like the boat. So, I was always made to feel that I wasn't average, that I was dumber than, and weaker than, smaller than, and so my mom's aspirations for me was to drive a truck for a living, which is not a bad way to make a living, but that's not what I had in mind. And so life was hard for me for a very, very, very long time, probably most of my life. And so I did not want to work on Wall Street, but at the same time, my grades weren't good enough to go away to college. So I was like, what the hell am I going to do with my life? And, I spent most of my life going to therapy, seeking all these different studies, because I had issues that needed to be resolved.
Right.
And I had a lot of low self-esteem. I was very insecure. And so when you spend your whole life being told you're dumber than everybody else, it's hard to aspire to something greater than maybe what this reality says all you can do or be. And so that's why I did a lot of these techniques, not only because I wanted to know higher truths, but I really needed to break through these things that were energetically holding me back, because I knew there was something special for me in store, but I couldn't quite get there.
And like one thing that you're describing is something that a lot of people who are doing spirituality or different types of religion or access consciousness is like this thirst that like the way that everything looks around you isn't real. There has to be something greater than this.
Yeah. And, in a lot of those other modalities, they do make those promises, but for whatever reason, they did not get me to where I knew was possible. Life was still a struggle, and it was still a battle. Right. I wasn't creating financially for my family. I mean, even after my wife passed, I wasn't just dealing with the grieving of the loss of my wife. I needed to really look at my life and look at it and say, you know what? I've been working my ass off just for mediocrity. And that wasn't what I had in mind. And, mediocrity wasn't acceptable for me. And it's like, why am I trying so hard just to get to mediocrity? There's something wrong here. And so when I discovered Access, it wasn't really about, I kind of rolled my eyes, to be honest with you, because by that point I had tried so many modalities and nothing really worked. And I put my family in a lot of debt because I put all those classes on credit cards. So when Access came along, I was in such deep despair, not only with the loss of my wife, but like just because life wasn't working out for me on any level.
Right.
On any level.
So
And
back to the bars, like so you heard the thing with Blossom Benedict and basically, Anthony, like, what are the bars? Because that's the first tool of this modality called Access
right.
Consciousness.
Well, when I heard it, it's like it's a hands-on technique. So that I was like, okay, let's go check that out. But it deals with these 32 points on your head that actually, carry the electromagnetic components of your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and considerations about all sorts of things: money, creativity, sadness, joy, healing, kindness, gratitude, peace, and calm. And so when she talked about the bars and when you lay your hands on these points, it brings up all those different energies, sort of like those viruses, and it like begins to delete them or dissolve them from not your memory bank, but because you'll still have the memories, but the memories no longer create that energetic charge in your body. So it can literally change your physiology, any sicknesses and diseases that may have resulted because of all those issues and past hurts. But not just that, but that's like a side effect, but also it gives you the space to begin to create your life. Because so many of us have gone to those motivational seminars, right? Tony Robbins or whatever. You can do it, you can do it. But by the time the weekend was over and Wednesday showed up, we were back down in the pit, right? And so what was great about the bars was it began to dissolve those limitations that are unseen.
Right.
Because I had turned over every rock to look at all my issues. And I'd finally gotten to the point where I was like, you know what? There's nothing left for me to know cognitively about my stuff. Okay? So whatever's holding me back, it's not because of lack of motivation. It's not because of unwillingness to look at something.
Right.
It was simply something that was unseen.
Right.
And in the bars, we talk about, especially in the clearing statement, which we talk about those nucleated spheres. A lot of times we try to deal with issues like in layers, which certain issues could be layers, but other issues are like what they call nucleated spheres. So it's like you get to these energetic issues that are unseen, and the bars actually begin to dissolve it so that all of a sudden you actually have more space in your world, so you can begin to choose what you know is possible. Whereas before, you have these like innate self-sabotaging mechanisms that are built in place.
Right. So basically, the bars, by touching these points on the head, it's like a almost like an exhale of the body, like a because different things are being erased and acknowledged.
It's like cleaning up the computer. It's like cleaning up the program, and so that the program has more space to function and could run better and smoother. And what I love about it is you don't even have to know what it's clearing out. And what I've learned over now, keep in mind, when I first started the bars and I heard that telecall, all right, I literally rolled my eyes. I'm like, okay, I heard about the clearing statement. It sounded like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. And I'm like, sounded like witchcraft and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. But I'm like, you know what? Because it's a hands-on modality, something kept pulling me energetically to take my two sons, who were 10 and 8 at the time, throw them in the car, and let's go at least learn the hands-on part, right? Because I was like, I'm not interested in the verbal processing. I'm just going to learn the hands-on part. And when I showed up to our first bars class, we were kind of lucky because we were the only ones who showed up. So we had all the special attention. And I watched how the bars affected my boys. My first time, I didn't notice a darn thing because I had so many questions, I wasn't receiving. See, the bars is also about receiving, which is a very difficult thing that we have in this reality. None of us like to receive, right? We're all taught it's better to give than to receive.
Right, because if you receive too much, it means you're greedy.
Right. And so the bars is about receiving, and I watched how therapeutic it was for the boys. So in my mind at the time, I'm like, you know what? Well, if it doesn't help me, I know it'll help the children.
Right.
Like I literally had the point of view that it may be too late for me because I've tried so many modalities. I was always the teacher's, best student.
It's actually I gotta stop you there. Knowing you now and the amount of fun that you have now, like the fact, like you try, like everything in your life has become really fun. And the fact that you had the point of view that it could be too late for you is actually, it's just very funny to me because, but how fast it changed from like, wow, my life is over. I'm just going to suffer through the rest of my life to like the life that you have now. That's pretty
Yeah.
remarkable.
My
I can't
commitment
even,
was to the
because I
children.
know you personally
Yeah.
and knowing that you could possibly even have a point of view, I'm like, really? Like, I didn't know you at that time. That's bizarre to me.
Well, it was strong. And like literally, my point of view was like, I'm going to stand in the gap for these generational curses. And if I don't heal, that'll be okay. But at least I stop these generational curses from being passed down to my children.
Right.
So I'm going to stop the momentum of the mental illness that has been passed down.
Right.
In each generation. And that's okay. I'll get run over by the truck, but as long as the kids are okay. So that literally had that point of view. So,
Right.
and like I said, I watched how, I mean, my kids would cry after leaving a bars class or talking to the entities class with Shannon O'Hara, because there was something that felt like home to them. And they were like, Dad, you got to get to the next class. We got to go to the next class, Dad. Come on. And I'm like, no. We have to do other things first. I'm going to go be a facilitator in this other thing. We'll do that. No, Dad, please. This is it. This is the stuff. So my 8-year-old son was telling me I needed to move forward with Access, where
Right.
I was actually resisting it. And
Right.
here's the cool thing about Access. And I know we haven't got into what Access is, but we're trying to give a background. With all the other modalities, I jumped in all the way, and I was like balls to the wall, as we say it. But with Access, I was like, well, I don't know. It costs a lot of money to do. I don't really have the money. So I just started dipping my toes in the water. And even with the bad attitude that I had, the results were like this. I got more results with the bad attitude and just doing a little bit than I did going full force with the other stuff that I
Right.
did.
Right.
So I couldn't deny the fact that these tools were working. So yeah, so I started getting the bars, and it was like my very 5th bars treatment, where it was interesting. This gentleman who worked on me, I totally judged him the minute he walked in the door. I'm like, what's this guy doing here? He's not open to consciousness. He's totally judgmental. But I knew in the back of my mind that I need to get a session from him because I was judging the crap out of him, right? That guy didn't know what the heck he was doing. That's what's beautiful about the bars. You don't even have to know what you're doing. His hands were in my ears. His fingers were up my nose. And then the facilitator would come and she would reposition his hands. But once she got his hands where they needed to be, it was like, I was like, oh my God. I thought I was going to vomit from that particular session. And that's when it hit me, when I was like, there is something fundamentally profound about this work. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's happening, but this is going to change my life. And that was only 11 months after my late wife had died. And literally the next day, I woke up and I felt like I had a brand new brain. I was whistling with joy.
That's pretty different from just touching the head. So how long does a bar session last for?
Well, the bars is really about following the energy, but, a decent session is about an hour and 15 minutes, but you could run someone's bars to 3 to 6 hours, depending on, the person, if you're truly following the energy. But, a decent session is about 1 hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. And you could do, I'm sorry. You could do quick sessions where you just like run your hand on just a few different points and stuff like that. Like kindness, gratitude, peace, and calm. My son was having a panic attack, right? About 3 months into me knowing the bars. And I was like, he was panting. And I'm like, son, you need to lay down and let me do the bars. He's like, no, let's just watch TV. And I'm like, the reason why we're doing this is so we don't have to go through the same stuff your mom did.
Right.
And so I kind of forced them. So I said, well, put on your favorite movie. And, so literally within 20 minutes, he fell asleep in my arms or in my hands while I was running his bars. And to me, that was worth everything. If that can calm him down and take him out of a state of panic or paranoia, I'm like, I'm going back no matter what. And so I've just seen people's lives change just from the bars.
So it's 1 hour. like I want to kind of get people a really good description of like what exactly it is. So is
Well,
it a strong pressure on the head? Is it a light touch? Is it reflexology?
everybody likes it differently, but as far as the amount of pressure you really want to apply is like about the pressure that if you were to like put your finger on someone's eyeball. Now, some people like it a little firmer. Some people like it maybe even a little bit off, but it is a touch technique, okay? And there is a giver and a receiver. Now, what we're finding is that the person giving is actually benefiting almost just as much as the person receiving. So, but the bars are ultimately about learning how to receive and clearing out those files that actually energetically don't serve you on any level. And I believe in my heart of hearts, I don't know what anybody's points of view are. If you have a Judeo-Christian point of view and don't believe in past lives or anything like that, even in the Bible, they talk about how the sins of the father get passed down 4 to 7 generations. So I believe that the bars will begin to eliminate anything you've inherited from your ancestors, okay? People who believe in past lives, I believe it clears out past life stuff. And I actually had a personal experience during a few sessions where I was like, I can't explain it to you, but it literally felt like things were leaving my body from other lifetimes.
Right.
So I know that sounds a little hokey to some of you guys. I did not believe in that sort of thing before I started Access. I was always like, it's possible, but I wasn't sure. But however you want to look at it, it clears some really deep stuff.
So if I was to come to you for a session, like, what would that be like? Like you lay down on a massage table?
Yeah, you lay down on a massage table, you bring your pillow and a blanket because sometimes you might get really chilly. And I just gently place my hand on different points of your head. And, it's up to the person that's on the table if they want to talk, or they can just go to sleep. There's no right or wrong way to receive the bars.
So talking while the bars are being run isn't going to ruin.
You don't really want to have coffee talk, you don't want to be gossiping. You don't want to really be, bitching and complaining about stuff. Now, if you happen to be with a facilitator that knows how to do verbal processing, then the bars is a great opportunity for the person giving to facilitate the person receiving using verbal processing.
Okay.
Which is another tool in Access. So let's talk about Access for a second.
Wait, just one sec. We have Benoit has a question here.
Okay. Quick question. When you put your hands on and you're running the bars, sometimes you feel more energy and sometimes you feel less. And does it really mean that if you feel more energy, then it's working more and it's deleting more? And if you feel less energy, then it's less working or anything?
No, not necessarily. There might be some people where you don't feel really much energy at all. And even if you run through the different dimensions and you don't really feel much of a charge, sometimes those people end up having really incredible experiences. So don't read into it. Just know that they're always working, but some will run stronger than others for sure. And it all depends on how long you've been doing it. Like forever, I could never perceive one bar called Aging Toaster. For whatever reason, I just, and really I've been doing it 40 years now, and now I'm starting to really, really perceive it. But for some people, it just runs differently than others.
Okay.
Good question.
Good question.
So basically, the bars, what you're saying is, I'm pretending I don't know what the bars are. So what you're saying is that the bars, it's basically 1 hour of touching the head. You lay down on a massage table, you kind of get covered up and cuddled, and then the person sits at your head and for an hour touches different points on the head.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, well, let's start with Access first. What is Access? And, really it's just a series of pragmatic tools to create your life.
So is the bars part of Access, or is Access part of the bars?
Well, the bars is part of Access Consciousness, and it's the first place you want to start. And if that's all you ever did and learned, that itself will change your life. Great question, Julia.
So let me just break this right down. So we have this modality that was created 25 years ago called Access Consciousness, correct?
Right.
And then, so who created Access Consciousness?
Access Consciousness was created by Gary Douglas. And so he created it about 26 years ago now. And he has a lot of very psychic and intuitive abilities. And it was one of those things, and they go into detail in the bars class about, how that showed up. But it was sort of like a download he got when his massage therapist asked him to um, um, take a look at one of his clients, and the energy read. And then, Gary got this awareness of these 32 points on the head that are literally changing people's lives so much for the last.
He had the awareness, like he channeled them, or he came up with them himself?
Well, at first he channeled them, yeah, and then and then later on, Gary's like, "Look, we're infinite beings. We don't need to channel anything," and so that changed over the years. But yeah, initially, yeah, it was sort of like he channeled the energy, and the awareness just popped up where these 32 points on the head showed up, and he's like, "Hey, here, touch these points," and then they saw the changes right away.
Okay.
And he started playing with those energies for a while.
So what was Gary's background before he channeled the bars? Was he a spiritual healer before that?
No, I think, Gary always had psychic abilities, but he always kind of put them on the back burner. And I think he was involved in real estate or something like that. And wasn't he an English major in college and a psych minor or something? I'm not really 100% sure, but he just got to the point in his life where I guess, he's like, look, I'm doing everything according to what this reality says you're supposed to do, and I'm just not satisfied. This is not working for me, what I'm doing. And he's like, I want to start looking at some of my psychic abilities, and I want to help this planet become a sustainable planet for generations to come. I know that there's something more possible here for people in their lives besides just making money.
I'm just going to interrupt you here. So basically he had the point of view that if people, ran the bars and started to think less and have less strong points of view and become more conscious, that doing that actually changes the world or heals the planet?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm breaking this down because...
No, break it down, baby.
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
If I may. What would you answer? I had this question that this week, if somebody, tend to trust more the older modalities that have been around for thousands of years. And then when they hear it's something so recent that was just invented in the USA, 20 years ago. So why, there's so many of these new things. So, I wasn't too sure how to kind of position that. I know it works, but then how to answer that kind of question.
I would just say to those people, just, hey, if it's working for you, keep doing it. For me, it was like the modalities that I had done weren't enough for me to create my life. And so, to me, what's beautiful about access consciousness, Gary says consciousness includes everything and it judges nothing. So, this is not a religion. It's not a philosophy. It's not metaphysics. It's really just pragmatic tools to create the life is possible. So if you're doing something that's already working, if you're happy with your religion, you don't need to change any of that. Consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. So if you're a Reiki master and it works for you, keep doing Reiki. This would be, the bars would be a great adjunct to your practice. And if you like to chant and do your yogic meditations on a daily basis and that works for you and it's fun for you, by all means, continue to do it. You don't have to give up one thing so you can do the other. If anything, it's a great adjunct to what you're already doing.
Cool.
All right. And Anthony, so what is actually consciousness? Like, what are we actually trying to achieve here? Like, to you, what is consciousness?
Well, it's what I just said a second ago, where, consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. I mean, we live in a reality where people are killing each other to defend their points of view and their rightness and to prove everybody else's wrongness. That's something fundamentally a little off about that. I mean, it's 2016 and we've been killing each other since the beginning of time just because of, all our different points of view and whatnot. But, consciousness to me also is about, creating the life that is possible for you and not living your life through the filters of everybody else's points of view about how you should be living your life. And that includes your mother, your father, your teacher, your preacher, your rabbi, whatever, your gurus. It's like, what do you know is possible? So to me, consciousness is about having more of you, but also creating a space for other people to have more of them.
Right. Very cool. That's not a bad target.
Well, that's something that always excited me. I mean, even as a kid, I always loved encouraging people and inspiring people because I saw everybody else's gifts and talents and capacities besides my own. And so every time I would see what people were capable of, I would always bring it to their attention and remind them over and over again how powerful they are in certain areas because they would forget. So that was something that always turned me on. And that's why I did all these different modalities, not only for my own growth, but it was something I wanted to be able to pay forward because I see a lot of sad faces on this planet. If you turn on the TV, God forbid, you turn on the news, it's just awful. And I try not to turn on the TV really ever, to be honest with you. And so there's something more that's possible for all of us. And I believe in each and every one of us, there are gifts and capacities. And unfortunately, most of us are not expressing them.
Right.
And so what I like to be is to facilitate people to their own greatness. And in the 16 years as a holistic chiropractor, the tools of access consciousness have been the most powerful ones that I've ever come across. And, and it's like, I know you've heard people say in other modalities, well, if I can do it, then anybody can do it. Well, that's sort of the same thing with me. It's like, listen, I was stuck. The people who know me in this area, they've seen how much of a struggle my life has been. They've seen me go on all these different endeavors of all these different modalities. A lot of times my friends would be like, what's he doing now? But now they're asking because they see that I'm actually creating the life I've always wanted to.
You have results.
Exactly. And what's interesting about Access is that it is the weirdest, wildest, wackiest set of modalities that I've ever come across, but they actually work. And what's beautiful is you don't have to give up anything. It's not a membership. Everything is just choice. And what I love about Gary is like, he's not a guru. He doesn't really want to be a guru. He tells everybody to be your own damn guru. That's the problem with this reality, is that we're always looking to somebody else to solve our problems and to give us the answers. And what's beautiful about Access is it's not about the answer. It's really about learning what question you need to ask to create different possibilities for yourself.
That's where I have a burning question.
Yes, sir.
If I may again.
Yeah, please.
So when I'm working with different people, they come up with some really tough questions like, I have so much obligations in my life. My life is stuck. What do I do? I can't have a child. I've been trying for years. What do I do? I know we're not supposed to give answers, but it's also really tricky knowing which questions to ask to kind of help them to get to the point of looking at what's going on. And maybe you have more awareness about which questions to ask. But for me, it's still something that's very difficult. And I don't want to go fishing with all kinds of questions because that doesn't feel right either.
Well, yeah, there's a fine line there because sometimes people start to feel like you're intruding on their territory if you keep asking questions over and over again. But to ask them questions in a kind way and let them know, listen, I'm just trying to get the energy of the situation here so I can ask you the right question. Just let them know and just say, hey, if it's making you uncomfortable, then just say, you know what, I'm not willing to go any further, or at least not in the class setting. So just always being aware of the energy. But, I know Gary's doing an awesome telecall coming up, and I forget what the name of it is, but where he actually teaches you the art of asking the question.
Oh, I would love that. What's the name of that telecall?
You have to be a certified facilitator too.
Oh, you do? Okay. So, so this is probably not the call to get into what kind of questions to ask people, you know what I mean, while you're facilitating.
No, I'm sure.
But there's nothing wrong. I know when I facilitated someone, though, they were so stuck in their story. And the more questions I kept asking, I can tell they had gotten to the point where they weren't willing to look any further. And so you have to have the awareness to stop at that point.
But I don't even have the awareness of knowing where to start or even what questions to ask.
So what if that was a great place to start right there? It's like, what question can I ask here? Yeah. And would you be willing to wait 30 minutes before you get maybe the download? Because someone else might say something in the class that will trigger the question to ask the other person.
Mm.
So just asking the question of the question, like what question can I ask here that will create the most change? Like saying that in your head.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So as a person's talking and they're stuck in their story, what question can I ask here that would change this?
Cool.
So,
Thanks.
you know,
So basically, there's the concept of access consciousness, and then we have the hands-on stuff called the bars is kind of the main thing, and then we have the verbal stuff. So it's like asking people questions to get them greater awareness, and then doing the clearing statement, which I don't know if we'll even have time to get too deeply into that today. I thought maybe we'd get a little bit deeper, but there's just so much. So basically, Anthony, well, let's start with the question. How does what you guys are discussing here, what does that have to do with access consciousness?
well, you know, like I said, access is not about finding the answer or giving someone the answer to their problems, okay, or their, you know, their woes. Asking a question, what it does is it brings up all these different energies. Okay, so question creates choice. All right. So most of
choice.
Yeah, so most of us function from no choice. We function from like we're so stuck in our story of whatever our issues are, okay? Wow, I'm a grieving widower. That's my story. And all you can see is the pain of that. Or
So basically, when you have that story, nothing other than what matches that story can be in your life. Like you can only, because we attract and create everything that comes to us, you're saying that if you have the story, then you can't even see anything outside of that story. It's like blinders.
Exactly. It's like being inside the forest and all you see is the trees in front of you and you don't see any other possibilities. So what the question does is it actually, well, I'm not going to get too esoteric, but the question, what it does is it activates these quantum particulates. So even in the Bible, it says, asking you shall receive, but nobody tells you why and how that works. But the question activates quantum entanglements to show you different possibilities. So the question...
What's a quantum entanglement?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I don't know what a quantum entanglement is.
So it's basically how like what you think or what you say creates your life. So it's like
yeah,
the
exactly.
quantum entanglement is like the world around you.
Well, it's just everything. It's just, you know, it's just where, to me, it's where consciousness functions from. So every time you ask, every time you have a negative thought, you send something in motion.
So it moves around sort of the way that the universe is entangled so that things come to you into your life.
Exactly. So you can say things and do things and you can activate and bring crap into your life, and you can say things or ask questions that actually create choice. And when you have more choice, choice ultimately creates greater awareness, right? And then when you have more awareness, then you have more possibilities. And that's the space that we try to get people to, especially when they're stuck in their story. We try to get them to see that there's actually more possible than what it is that they're actually caught up in. So there's like an art to all of it. And so when you do ask the question, it activates these quantum entanglements so that literally the universe can show you something else that's possible.
Oh, okay. So if you have the story, then the universe can't show you what else is possible. You just keep getting the same thing that
You keep
but
reinforcing the same story.
But if you ask a question, it's like the universe will sort of start to like conspire to bring you something different than if you just went, this is my story.
And the part that's magical about all of it is you never know how it's going to show up. You never know what doorway it's going to come through. And that's the key to all of it. If you can just let go of the how,
right,
it opens you up to multiple possibilities and you really start to function from a place of choice as opposed to victim.
Right. Yeah. And how many people are just, they don't even realize it, but they just totally have decided that they're victims to life rather than realizing that they create it every day by what they think and whether they ask questions, or most people ask no questions. So their lives can't get any better.
Yep. Exactly.
Cool.
And what's beautiful about the clearing statement is So if you're running someone's bars, or if you're just doing one-on-one facilitation, like right now, for example, someone says, hey, I have this issue in my life, what can I do about it? I'm not to give the advice. My job is to find the questions to ask, so it creates greater awareness in their world. And so
Right.
beautiful. And that's where the clearing statement comes in. The clearing statement is something that follows the question. Okay. And if you're all interested in the clearing statement, you can go to www.theclearingstatement.com, because it is really long to explain. You don't have to understand even what it means.
We can almost have our own call on what is the clearing statement. That's a
No
whole hour
kidding.
in itself.
You don't have to know what it means for it to work. But the clearing statement is designed to bring up the different energies of where the different issues in your life where you're basically unconscious.
So is that like you were talking about how like you have the story? It's like the story
Right.
has
So,
an energy and the clearing statement wipes out the story, sort of?
well, kind of, yeah, because what happens is, so for anything not to be working out in your life, if you're not receiving the amount of money that you want to receive, if you're not in the relationship you want to be in, if you're not having the kind of sex you'd like to be having, or the health, there's a place of unconsciousness that you're functioning from.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're stupid or anything like that. It just means that the energy behind it is created such a barrier to you actually gaining any awareness to see what else is possible. So the clearing statement is literally designed to dissolve or break through those areas of unconsciousness. And then when those areas of unconsciousness are dissolving, then you could actually see that you actually have another choice.
Right.
In the matter, or there's something else that's possible. So like I said, 11 months after the bars, because there was a lot of verbal facilitation going on, I woke up very happy the next day. And it was only 11 months. Now this reality says in some cultures have you mourn the loss of a loved one for like a month. You're supposed to wear black or something, right? So I actually felt guilty that I had joy in my world. And so those voices start creeping back in. You're not supposed to be this happy. It's only been 11 months after your wife passed. But what the process did is it began to create space for me to see, hey, I can have a happy life.
Right.
Yes. Did I go through something that was tragic? Yeah, I sure did. Am I also grieving for my children as well as grieving my own loss? Yeah, I am. But you know what? There's something else that's possible and greater. And that's what I try to encourage. Now, before Access, I didn't know. I thought my life was basically going to be about me cleaning up the mess of the suicide, all my life. And now I can honestly say I'm creating my life, and it's very magical. And a lot of things are showing up with ease. Whereas before I would fight and fight and fight to have things show up, and sometimes not even show up at all.
Right.
And how long did it take for you to get to that point, though, of now it's been 4 years, and was that really quite quick, or?
No, Benoit, that's an interesting thing, because you have to, there were always these little major things that would show up along the way. At that time when I was in it, though, I didn't necessarily acknowledge it. So I can say, oh, it took 3.5, 4 years, but that's actually a lie. There were major things that would show up that created like an explosion in my world. So I'm able to look back retrospectively and say, that was a turning point. That was a turning point. That was a turning point. So my 5th bar session was a huge turning point. Okay. Several months later, when I thought about quitting Access, this woman from Poland asked me to be a host for Foundation Level 1. And something profound happened in that class. I can't remember exactly what. So there were so many things that happened along the way. And this is the beautiful part. I wasn't making any more money than I was before. Every class I was able to pay for in cash. In fact, my chiropractic numbers were going down. But what happened was the universe sent me an acupuncturist that needed to rent out 2 rooms. He shared the expense of my front desk girl. And then I had a massage therapist that drove by my office, and she just walked in and introduced herself, says, I would love to rent a room for you because the energy feels so good here. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, there's a room available. So that was an extra $650 a month. The universe literally conspired in a good way to make it possible for me to go to these classes. My accountant screwed up for 6 months, and I ended up getting $14,000 back in taxes. And then the next year, I didn't have to pay taxes for the first 6 months because he messed up so bad. And then I got another $7,500. So all that stuff showed up so I can do all this work. And then there was that one magical day about 15, 16 months ago when Gary asked me to work on him. And I just laid my hands on him and his body jumped. And he's like,
and who's Gary?
Gary Douglas, I'm sorry, the founder of Access Consciousness. And he's like, you know, you have very similar capacities as Dane, who's the co-creator of Access Consciousness. And I'm like, I do? And they're like, yeah. They're like, we'd like you to start doing sessions in the back of the room. And I'm like, I can't do sessions. What do you, I don't know how to, you know? And they're like, yes, you can. It's, you know, and it was like really the moment I'd been waiting for my whole life. Ever since I was a little boy, I have literally dreamt about the things that I'm actually doing right now.
Right.
I hope my time comes too.
What's that?
I hope my time comes too.
Yeah, well, it will. And you just have to keep, you know, Gary says, never give up, never give in, never quit. And that's basically, it's really true.
Because your story, I could change it with my name and it would be very similar, except I'm a bit probably where you were 4 years ago, and things are shifting, but you know, it's, yeah, they are. I just, yeah, would like to know that it will really shift a lot more, because I know that my life could be like so much more than it is. And I'm tired of the crap. I'm tired of being small. I'm tired of being invisible. And I've made a demand to change that. And I just want it to show up. And yeah, there's a lot of challenges that makes me want to run back to the way it's been. And I keep saying no.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that still shows up for me too, believe it or not. Okay. And, you know, and a lot of times you have to look at too, one of the tools that we learn in Access is that, you know, 90% or 99% of your thoughts and feelings aren't even yours. So you have to really use those verbal tools when those things show up for you, the more you begin to choose for you, because you will have, well, there will be a tax, if you will. So when you start to feel like you're making progress, there will be a tax along the way. And that's where the tools are really, really important. And you literally have to become like a walking, talking meditation with the verbal tools that you learn in Access Consciousness. And, but all I can say is even the great things that are showing up, even if they're that big, would you be willing to acknowledge them? Because every time you acknowledge them, you actually activate those quantum entanglements even more. You're like, oh, he's having gratitude. Let me send him more things to be grateful for. And I know it sounds hokey, but it really does work, almost like waving a magic wand. I mean, something was showing up for me in Italy not too long ago, and I looked at Julia and I'm like, I'm in shock. She goes, why? You're in shock because your life is basically being handed to you on a silver platter? And I'm like, and I almost threw up, you know? And then I probably found like 15 ways to like sabotage it inside my own insanity, you know, because it's been there, God knows, forever. But that insanity is not even mine. A lot of that is like maybe my mom's points of view about how things can only be good for too long, and then something's going to come along and, you know, destroy it all.
Someone in the chat here is saying, Benoit, you are awesome. And you're in Georgia. Who does all that shit belong to?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Keep going, man.
And just, you need to move to like Atlanta, Georgia, and you'll be a little happier. A different Georgia.
No. Thank you.
Just keep going. That's all I have to say, you know. And
can I just interject one thing with the years that I've been doing this?
Please.
Is it takes time. Like it's like you're making the choices, and it's like the future will show up, and there is a time lapse.
Yeah. And
the more that you keep walking forward and be like, wow, it's not showing up, but that's okay. I know it's going to show up. And if you don't go back to like the convulsing in the corner, there's a bit of a time lapse, but it will.
And if you can,
thank you both. You're awesome.
And if you can get rid of the point of view of exactly what you want to show up to, then that actually opens up to not only maybe what you want to show up, but actually even something that's more expansive too.
It's the same like you. I just want it. I just know it has to be more and bigger. And anyhow, I'll stop here. But yeah, thank you for that.
No, that's great. That's awesome. There was something I was going to say, but I forgot. But yeah, I remember 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, at Facilitators, it was like,
what's Facilitators?
well, you become a certified facilitator in Access Consciousness after you become a bars facilitator, and that's where you're able to teach the foundation class and teach people some of the, do the verbal clearings and whatnot. But at that class, up until that point, the classes were about me getting through my drama and trauma. And on the third day of that class, I had this like, oh wow moment where it shifted from my drama and trauma to the actual power and the magic that these tools actually have and can create. And I wept the whole day, not from sadness, but I wept the whole day. It was literally tears of gratitude. And then I went, oh my God, it's time for me to now jump in with both feet. And that was 2.5 years since I had started Access. I was finally ready to jump in with both feet, because it went from, this is to help me with my issues, to there's magic in this work. And I'm in a position where I can facilitate somebody else to their own magic in their life, and their own greatness. And that was one of the greatest awarenesses I had since I had started Access. And it changed my whole point of view of why I was actually doing the work.
Thank you.
Cool. Very cool. So we only have a couple minutes left. And so basically, there's a lot. We didn't get to parts 2 and 3. What is the clearing statement and what is ESB? But maybe those are
the clearing statement's fine. The clearing statement I kind of went over. I'm not going to get into the details of that. People could read that. I'm not a detailed kind of guy anyway. And that's the beautiful part about it, is because it works. And I do want to say about the clearing statement, when you guys do look it up, and some of you who haven't even done anything with Access who do look it up, I resisted the clearing statement. I did not want to do it. I did not want to say it. I was not interested in the verbal processes. I resisted it big time. And again, it was one of those big ahas along the way when I'm like, oh my God, these verbal clearing tools will literally change things as well as the hands-on stuff. And then I was like, I got to do it because I'm just tired of suffering. I'm tired of suffering. And when you get tired of suffering and you've done just about everything, you're willing to try anything. And it worked. And it was like, oh my God, things started changing on the spot. And so the clearing statement was very, very powerful. And do we have a second to talk about ESB too? Because that was another thing that changed my life,
Yeah.
With Access, you guys, there are a gazillion tools. It's like walking into a library and you have all these different books to choose from. And that's kind of like what it is with Access Consciousness and the tools. There's the hands-on tools. There's the bars. There's these over 60 different body processes. There's the verbal clearings. And then there's the energetic synthesis of being, which is a technique that was created by Dr. Dane here, the co-creator of Access Consciousness. Now, keep in mind, for those of you who don't know anything about Access, Dr. Dane was suicidal 16 years ago. And that's what piqued my interest to look at Access, because my late wife committed suicide. And after one bar session, he woke up the next day and he said, it was the first time I didn't think about taking my life in a long, 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 long time. So that piqued my interest. Now, does that happen for everybody? No, not on the first one, but it happened for him. And now he's the co-creator of Access Consciousness. And it's like in over 170 something countries now, and maybe even more. But he created the energetic synthesis of being, ESB. And if you go to my website, it'll also say symphony sessions as well. And that's actually where you actually learn how to do it. But that's another process. That's a hands-on and hands-off procedure where you're literally playing with the molecules of someone's being. And before we start every session, you ask the person, if there's anything you can get out of this session, what would it be? You know, it's kind of like asking Santa Claus what you want for Christmas, you know, but it's all energetic. And when someone has remember, we ask, right? And it activates the quantum entanglements. Now, from my point of view, this may not be in the literature, but when you ask, it like brings up this field, okay? And that field is what you've created. It's your desire. And what that allows the person who's the facilitator doing the ESB or the symphony session, it allows them to play in that space and literally break through those solid molecular structures that had literally stopped you from creating the life you know is possible, especially the ones that are beyond your cognitive mind. And so I've been blessed to be able to do this technique with people around the world, and hearing people start to choose for them for the first time in their lives, having better sex lives with their spouse or their lover or whoever, making choices to leave the job they've been in for 25 years to start something else they've been wanting to do. I mean, it is beautiful. And if nothing else, it helps you to get more connected to you, the infinite being, okay? That the being that's been hiding behind all the points of view that you've bought from this reality, from your mother, your father, what your body looks like, whatever. And it literally breaks through that to get you to that space where you experience and become aware of the infinite being that you are. And it allows you to see beyond the things that you've been stuck behind for however many years. And to me, it's one of the greatest modalities out there. And sometimes you could be a little uncomfortable after a session because literally those barriers have been destroyed. And you're literally swimming in a sea of infinite possibility instead of like the cesspool that you know as your comfortable life.
It's very uncomfortable not to be in the cesspool when you're used to the cesspool.
Quick
It's not always
question.
story.
Is it just as effective when you do the ESB in person as when you do them by distance?
Well, you know, that's a great question. And I guess I would have to have you ask the people that I've worked on. So I've had people say, Anthony.
It is. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, I've had people say that felt like a real session. And I'm like, cool. Awesome. You know, so yeah, I do Skype sessions all the time. And, you know, I like to touch people. I'm just used to that. So, you know, a lot of times on my session, I'll touch certain areas because there are certain places in our body that just haven't ever been touched in the way that was kind and nurturing. And believe it or not,
feel his hand when we're like, I've had distance sessions from him, can actually like feel his hand as though it's on me. Like, it's like he's in the room.
Yeah. I've had people say that. And so I didn't know if it was going to work or not, but I did. And I played with it and I experimented with it and it did. And I've had people get great results just from remote sessions. Yeah.
Cool.
Any other questions out there?
Well, this has been an awesome explanation. So basically, access consciousness, from what you're saying,
tools. They're tools. That's it.
Is just a bunch of different layers, different facets. There's different things going on. There's body stuff. There's verbal sort of like psychological clearing, and it's just basically it's tools, but it's not A, B, and C. It's like take anything and create whatever you're going to create because your life is completely different.
There's no formula. There's no have-tos. It's probably one of the most, open spaces to function from as a facilitator than any other modality I've ever been a part of, because they always have these like cookie cutter rules of you have to do X, Y, and Z before you do boom, 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 boom. And that's not really true. You're really just following your awareness and the energy of things.
Cool. Awesome.
And you know what's beautiful? My brother's on the phone or on the line. I see him. It's probably this is the first thing that he's actually seen with regards to any of it. But I'll never forget the day that my wife passed away. My late wife passed away, and he said something that was probably one of the most profound things. He's like, as tragic as this situation is, I really believe that there's going to be an opposite like greatness that's going to show up in your world. And I can honestly say that I texted him not long ago and I said, you know, remember what you said to me that day? And I said, all of that is beginning to show up. Literally, all my dreams are coming true. So I thank you for your prophetic guidance at that time. And I certainly wasn't in a state to hear that. But
That's what I do.
I feel truly blessed. And I'm grateful for Gary Douglas and Dr. Dane here because these tools are incredible. They do work if you use them. And it's just really a matter of giving you guys time and being patient with yourselves along the way.
Cool.
So thank you, little brother. I love you.
Love you too. And nice to meet you formally, Julia.
Yes, you too. Hopefully it'll be in person soon.
Where are you guys? Are you both in the same place right now? Like in the?
No.
Are you in Canada?
I'm in Vancouver right now.
Yeah. Anybody have any other
where
questions?
Are you in?
I'm at
Oh,
home.
mine wasn't good. I just want. Oh, all right.
Yeah. Well, if nobody has any other questions, thank you so much, Anthony, for taking us through this.
Thanks.
Thank you
Awesome,
both.
guys. Thanks for joining me.
I think that this can be really widely spread, like the recording of this, so that, you know, when anybody has the question, what is access consciousness, you know, we can direct them to this video, and it's a 1-hour conversation about like what exactly are these tools, what is consciousness, what are the bars, what is the clearing statement, and you know, what am I reaching for and what can it change? So thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks, Anthony.
Yep, thank you guys.
It was
Love you.
fantastic. Thank you guys.
Bye.
Both. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.